the reason why I quit my job was because I realized I wasn't spending enough time with my grandma. I needed to be there to watch her. I had no plan, so I just quit. But when I told my employer at that time I wanted to quit, they offered me more money. And I felt like I wasn't heard. They just said, okay, do you want a raise? How about extra $10,000? I said, no, it's not about the money. It's about quality time with my grandma. And then that conversation ended, and I moved on, and I quit, and I stayed home. So that really struck a chord with me because I just really felt like they weren't hearing what my needs were. But I didn't have the tools at that time to really express, what are the other options.
Did you know that in 2020, there were 53 million caregivers in the United States? And by 2025, this number is expected to grow to 62.5 million. 73% of these caregivers also have a job. They are called working caregivers, and they are invisible because they don't talk about their caregiving challenges. Working Caregivers, the Invisible Employees, is a podcast that will show you how to support working caregivers. Join Selma Archer and Zach Demopoulos on the Working Caregivers, the Invisible Employees podcast as they show you how to support working caregivers.
Hey everyone, hello, I'm Zach.
I'm Selma.
Welcome to another episode of Working Caregivers, the Invisible Employees. So excited today to have a guest who I have befriended many, many years, and it's such a pleasure to see her today. Hello, Jenn Chan.
Hello, Zach, and hi, Selma.
Hi, Jen. Welcome.
Welcome to the show. We are so honored and pleased that you're here. Summer just kind of ended here, Labor Day weekend coming up. How's your summer been?
Thanks for having me on here, and thanks for asking me about my summer. I'm based in San Francisco Bay Area, so the summer's been pretty hot out here. It's been great. I've been having family vacations. Get this, I did 2 national parks this summer with my family, and let's just say it's fun, and it's it's a lot more work than you imagine, but when you see the photos at the end, it's completely worth it. So we had fun visiting Yosemite National Park here, and then we also took a flight up north to Mount Rainier National Park.
Oh.
So just being able to get out, be in nature, be in the woods, smell the fresh air, and see the sights. That was the summer, and just happy memories, and it was fun.
I love it.
You're the family with the cart with overflowing luggage. But we used everything. So that's the fun part. You think you're going to use everything? We used everything.
You're way too young for this, but I'm visualizing Family Circle cartoon. You just drew that picture for me with the filled car, and you're pointing to Yosemite Park, and the kids are like, "Where's ice cream?" Or where, what? I love it. I love that. Well, I'm glad you had a great summer. Let's jump into all the great work that you're doing, and thank you for all your caregiver advocacy. That's how you and I met, and all the things great stuff that you're doing for both care recipients and caregivers. Titles that I picked up off LinkedIn are really amazing. You're a certified caregiving consultant. You're a caregiver coach. I love party starters. We'll have to talk a little bit about that. And a certified senior advisor. So tell me what got you into all this? Why do you do all this? You seem a little too young to do that, if you don't mind me saying.
I got into this because honestly, it was just because I was a family caregiver for my grandma. I got into all these certifications. I felt like after taking care of my grandma, I wanted to continue caregiving. I know it sounds a little crazy that after caregiving for your family, which I did for 10 years, that I wanted to pursue that. 10 years of my life. I started caregiving when I was in my mid-20s, right? So you talk about being a young adult, 25 to 35. Those are prime time years for creating your career or moving forward with, say, your education. But I took a lot of that time to caregive for my grandma. So I decided, hey, afterwards, 10 years is a lot of experience. You can chop that up in your resume for let's just say all the project management, all the communication with family, all the coordination with all the healthcare individuals and care team involved. I decided to pursue a career, but I didn't go to school for caregiving. Let's just call it that. Currently, I did not go to school. So I said, what can I do to continue in this space? And I realized that I wanted to continue supporting other caregivers that were in my shoes to focus on coaching caregivers, then also realizing that there's a whole segment, of senior care services that maybe I didn't even tap into when I was taking care of my grandma at home. There's a whole bunch of other senior services, so I wanted to educate myself and tap into the network with other senior care providers, such as those that were, say, home care companies offering home care services, which I didn't use, but I want to learn about it. And I wanted to be a point of contact and be an expert for potentially my peers within my community. And I can tell you that during those times, none of my peers were caregiving. But I can tell you now, I'm going to fast track 15, 20 years later. I have family and friends calling me asking about caregiving, asking for what are the next steps, what should we do, who should we contact. And I feel so blessed that I moved forward in this direction and to educate myself and the services available, and then be able to direct my family and affairs in the right direction, at least a starting point. So I can tell you that for me, being a caregiver and then having access community resources, I wanted to also give back to the community where I can work with caregivers, and I can also work for other agencies that offer services to caregivers.
Oh, bless you. Like I said, we're really honored to have you. You don't find too many people who can have that type of passion and energy and be able to do the things that you did when you were younger. And your grandmother, I'm sure, was very, very appreciative. I do recall a picture of you pushing your grandmother on a beach in a
Wow.
incredible, weird-looking contraption where it's got big wheels so you can get on the sand, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
So you
yeah.
did have some access to some resources at that point, but how did you go about, seriously, at that age? And let's face it, it just wasn't that common or popular, may I add, online to talk about young caregivers and where access resources. I'm just curious, where did you go get your stuff, your help, your support?
At that time, I feel like now the caregiving conversation is huge. Back then, it just wasn't as huge. And I'm going to tell you, with all honestly, I didn't really start looking for resources until halfway through my journey. I can't recall a specific time. Maybe it was year 4 or 5. And I mention these because it's important, because it's about identity. I did not self-identify as a caregiver until somewhere in the middle of the journey. I really, truly thought I was just taking care of my grandma. I'm just a granddaughter taking care of my grandma. I'm doing all the things, but soon it kind of all the things. She had diabetes, and then she ended up needing to be in a wheelchair. So not only was I giving her insulin injections and managing her medications, taking her to a doctor's appointment, I was helping her transfer toileting. It became kind of a full-time job. That's when I realized, I said, wait, this is an actual role. And I just realized, I said, this is something I need to look, I need to search. And then I think I was Googling, doing some internet searches, and then I came across the word caregiver. And that's when I said, wait, what are the responsibilities of a caregiver? And I said, oh, I do this. I do all of these things. Oh, wait, so that's me. Okay, there's a name for it. Great. So now what? When I was able to find that identity, that, let's call it the key word, then I was able to search the internets of the world and all the resources, all the groups, all the conferences, all the workshops, all the books that were available. And it completely opened my world, knowing that I was not alone in this journey, but there's so many resources I can tap into. And that's when I just started finding out, like, what can I do? Speaking of that wheelchair with grandma, like, how can I as a caregiver take my grandparent in a wheelchair, still enjoy nature? And then going back to the national parks, San Francisco, the Golden Gate Park, they offered free wheelchairs. You just drop off your ID and they give you this wheelchair that with big wheels where you can go, and then you come back. And then you get your ID back. Simple little things like that because of a keyword search. I mean, I can't emphasize the importance of that identity piece. So for me, it was with understanding the responsibilities that kind of snowballed into a list of a full-time role, then realizing, oh, I am a caregiver. So now what do I do?
Yeah.
And I also want to let you know, when I was taking my grandma to the doctor's appointments, I don't recall them telling me in the beginning that I was her caregiver. They just said, who are you? Oh, you're the granddaughter. Okay, great. That was just that. But once I became a caregiver, then I recall I was looking for all the caregiver brochures in the waiting room, asking for all the caregiver programs that were available. So I wanted to let you know that if I didn't pick up on that identity piece, I think it may have taken me a little bit longer to figure out who I was.
Yeah, great point.
So, Jenn, You mentioned earlier that you have people now calling you and asking you about, care questions and what they should do and what's the next step. And that's so gracious of you to be available to them to do that. And in fact, you were so gracious to Zach and I by writing comments in our book, chapter 3 of our book. You shared your story with us about becoming a caregiver for your grandmother at such a young age. You also said that you ended up quitting your job. And you commented that it's very important to work for an employer that supports caregiving. I just wonder if you could talk a little bit about that, why you feel that's so important.
Yes, and thank you. Thank you for just including my just story in your book, which I find is absolutely compelling on the care culture of the working caregivers. And I mentioned the importance of the flexibility employers and for them to acknowledge caregiving because I actually started talking to employers and leading with that story. And it allowed me to figure out if I wanted to work for the company. The reason why I quit my job was because I realized I wasn't spending enough time with my grandma. I needed to be there to watch her. I had no plan, so I just quit. But when I told my employer at that time I wanted to quit, they offered me more money. And I felt like I wasn't heard. They just said, "Okay, do you want a raise? How about extra $10,000?" I said, "No, it's not about the money. It's about quality time with my grandma." And then that conversation ended, and I moved on, and I quit, and I stayed home. So that really struck a chord with me because I just really felt like they weren't hearing what my needs were. But I didn't have the tools at that time to really express, what are the other options. And so when I finally got back into the workforce, I was actually interviewing for part-time jobs. And when they asked about my availability, I said, it's really important for you to know that I'm on call 24/7, that I take care of my grandma. At any point, I need to just leave to take care of her. That's what I need to do. That's my priority. Some companies that I interview with said, well, that's not going to work. I said, well, then your culture doesn't work with me. And it's okay. I'm interviewing for you too. So I'm just going to move to another company that supports that. Eventually, I found a company that was able to support my caregiving responsibilities and also offer me flexibility at work. I was working for a beverage brand, working in the grocery business, and I got to determine my own hours as long as I did the job. That's all that really mattered. And then I was able to complete my reports. I was also able to drive around. So if I had to take off, I was able to drive back home. So I found a job that supported my caregiving responsibilities, gave me the flexibility to complete my job at a flexible work time that worked for me. I feel very fortunate that I did that. And because I had that, I've been an advocate for other folks when they ask about, how do I balance finding a new job or how do I balance caregiving? I say, lead with caregiving because you really can't hide it. It's only going to get more difficult. You're going to be doing more and more. So lead with it, talk about it. This is your life. If you're going to work for a company 40 hours full time, you got to let them know that you also have a life too. So you got to be able to balance that. It's a moment for negotiation, but also at the same time, ask yourself, do you want to work for a company that cannot support your lifestyle?
Wow.
Right.
The conversation really goes both ways.
Yeah.
And I say, I got really fortunate. I was really lucky to be able to work for a beverage company that offered that flexibility. I understand not all jobs do that. If you care about yourself, your lifestyle, you're committing a lot of time to this company. So they should be able to commit a little bit of something to you too, to support you as their employee, to show you that, hey, if you need to take time for caregiving, do so, and we support you, and you have that safety net, you have that security for coming back, knowing that we support what you're doing.
That's awesome.
Yes. Wow. Definitely.
Yeah. So lead with it. I say whoever's listening right now, just lead with that. And if you're offering it to your employees, let them know that, let's talk about caregiving.
Yes.
Or maybe it's a conversation of when we're getting to know each other on the interview process, say, are there people that you are responsible for? People or pets, let's call it that. Pets are family too.
I think
family members too.
I think our working caregivers right now who are listening in are leaning forward and picking up some great tips about looking for flexibility. Like who would think, driving is a flexibility. Lead with your caregiving story, which most caregivers I've spoken to are afraid to do that, are afraid of their gaps.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily about money, which is just amazing. Both Selma and I, being in HR for many years, know that our leaders will always go to us and go, could we just throw some more money at them? Why don't we
Yeah.
just find out, first of all, why they're leaving? Don't always
Yeah.
assume it's because it's the money. I just love that. So our working caregivers are leaning in. I hope the HR folks and the leaders that are listening to right now are also
Yeah.
leaning in. And if you haven't leaned in, I hope you're leaning in now, because I'm going to ask our friend here about her entrepreneurial spirit. If there's an HR leader out there or a benefits director that you want to make a name for yourself, you want to listen to this part. You have a very unique offering in your business, and it's called the Senior Shower Project. That's what you were doing when I met you. And it's very unique. I've never heard of anything like this. So please, Jenn, tell us about this concept, why you came up with it, and how can this be used in the workspace today?
Thanks for asking me, Zach. And I remember when we met and I shared the concept with you. I am in the middle of this process here, so just with all honesty, I am launching this as we speak. So with the Senior Shower Project, it's a project because it's something that's really passionate to me, and I want you to. It's all about celebrating family caregivers with a party, with a new party that I'm calling Senior Shower, much like a baby shower is for entry to parenthood or motherhood or fatherhood. Think about a senior shower as a party for caregiverhood, specifically caregiving for older adults or seniors within your family or community. And the reason why I'm really excited about the Senior Shower Project is because that it is a celebration of a life milestone. It's of becoming a family caregiver. And how does that tie into the workplace? Sometimes in the workplace, we kind of don't know. I'm going to bring it back to the identity piece. We don't know we're a caregiver until it really snowballs. We're doing multiple responsibilities. And once we become a caregiver, it's your identity kind of blurs. You're not only are you a daughter or a son or a niece. Now you just take on this other caregiver role. On top of that, you're still working, so you still have the employee role. So now imagine if at the senior shower, like I said, it's very similar to a baby shower. Imagine if at this party, your family and friends, say your colleagues, got together to celebrate that you're about to take on this caregiving role. They all come together and share their stories of caregiving. They all come together and share their advice, or perhaps even share their tips of what you need to do, who you need to call. A start, like kind of like a setting up a new caregiver for success, like a starter list. Here, if you're going to jump into this caregiving role for whoever you're taking care of, we're here to support you. Here's a party. Here's all the people that are going to know that this is now your new identity, and you're not going to be alone through the process. Think about the party as just like a starting point, right? Like I said, entry to caregiverhood. Now, imagine if a senior shower were to happen at the workplace. Say, hey, you're about to take off. Say you're actually accessing your employee benefits. You're actually accessing the paid time off for several weeks. And all your managers, your colleagues get together and, maybe invite some family and friends too. They threw you a party. You get that email, you get that text, you get that Slack note saying, hey, come to the break room. The senior shower is happening for Zach at 1 p.m. Come on now. Let's everybody come together and celebrate
this party
moment.
started.
Let's get this party started.
I
it's so
love it.
momentous. And at the same time, Zach can know that if he were to take those several weeks off, that all those people in that break room knows what's happening. He doesn't need to. Let's just say Zach does not need to continue to repeat the caregiving story over and over again, because sometimes,
Yes.
honestly, caregiving can be very intimate and it can be very intense, and it's a very vulnerable thing to keep opening that story, right? But if everybody was there, knows the story, knows what you're about to do, then Zach doesn't need to repeat himself and knows that at the journey, if he needs support, he can call, text whoever that was there, because they knew that this was a journey that he was going to go on. And it's an easier ask. Many caregivers
Wow.
feel alone on their journey, feel really isolated.
Yeah.
But if you can have this party, then you can call anybody that's there that says they're willing to take a phone call. And it's an easier ask. Or maybe it's the other way. Hey, can you check in on me in a couple weeks? Just make sure I'm okay. There's so many benefits of
Yeah.
celebrating the identity, and then to be able to feel like you're still emotionally, socially, mentally connected with some other folks, and they can actually check in on your well-being. Because think
Yeah.
about it. If you haven't heard from a colleague not even as a colleague, family, or friend in a while, you're going to ask, hey, how is Zach doing? Or how is Selma doing? Hey, you know, isn't he caregiving? Let's check in on that. And just that acknowledgement of that caregiving piece can do wonders for a caregiver that's been doing
Love it.
just all the responsibilities
Yeah.
day in and day out, knowing that other people are thinking about them. And I'm going to tell you, caregiving, not everybody signs up for it. Nobody really knows how to do it unless you decide to go to the healthcare profession. It's difficult, it's hard, it's frustrating, and it's good to know that some folks are on your side, and that
Yeah.
they are thinking about you.
Wow. So I
It's a
love it.
very
Yeah.
small segment of what I think the senior shower could do in the workplace setting. Obviously, outside of that, there can be so much more with
Yeah.
family celebrations and traditions. I can go on and on, Zach. You know, I know
Yeah.
we're focused on the workplace, and it's really important to me. And I want you to know that, you know, when I think about why I quit and the company that I work for, perhaps they did not have that care culture in place. Perhaps they did not know the demands of caregiving, the juggling, the
Yeah.
work-life balance of caregiving and also working. There's a lot of difficult decisions to make. I just think if this can move the needle just a little bit to identify caregivers and
Yes.
to give them kind of, as you said in your book, you know, a caregiver handout for managers or best practices. Think about if you just gave your employee and say, hey, you're about to go, here's a little booklet, here's a starter kit for you, and then please access all these phone numbers and resources that are available to you with our benefits program. And if you have any questions, call us and we can help you.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah,
Love it. Love
that's
it.
great.
You're this is why Selma and I were so honored to have you on board, not just for your advocacy work, but for what you're doing here on your entrepreneurial side. And we get asked all the time, hey, what is one way we can create a care culture in our organization? Well, take note. There's one easy
Yeah.
way to do it, just what Jen just talked about.
The amazing thing about that too, Jen, in addition to what some of the benefits that you just mentioned, it takes the secrecy out of caregiving. People no longer have to hide the fact that they're a caregiver and trying to work their job and handle their responsibilities at work and handle their responsibilities at home. And the company is embracing them as part of the the culture, the functioning business, that it's okay. We're going to support you. We know you're a caregiver and we're here for you. So I think that's amazing. That is, we're behind you. we're definitely behind you.
I appreciate the support on that. And I support you too,
Absolutely.
because I don't think caregiving needs to be a secrecy. I think we all caregive for somebody or something.
Yes.
So I think normalizing the conversation and normalizing the role, I think it's going to be huge as more and more folks are going to become caregivers
Absolutely.
in the near future.
Well, before we let you go, I have another question, and that's about you. Actually, I'm just so impressed and overwhelmed by the many advocacy roles that you've undertaken, and how much you've contributed to the care economy in this country. And among them is your experience working for Caring Across Generations, where you worked on the national level to help make care in this country more accessible, more affordable, more equitable for everyone. So if you were talking to someone in our audience right now, a business leader or employer in our audience, what would you say is one thing, maybe one or two things that they could do right now, right away, to help move care in this country, in the right direction?
One of the things that I think employers can do right now is to really educate their employees on what benefits are available to them currently in their workplace. That's the one step, because some employees may not even know they have access to these benefits, letting them know that they are able to take time off. So education on that aspect. Another aspect is also to let them know that I'd have to say this, their vote matters. It's really important. When I worked with Caring Across Generation on a national level, it was a lot of campaigning. It was about certain policies that were in place that actually affected community-based organizations that offered caregiver resources. And I'll mention that because it's important to know once you become a caregiver that you're going to be accessing all the community services that are available to you. So if there are policies that are affecting the funding of these programs, I think that's something that we should be made aware of. So for something that would be actionable, companies can to do the survey, do a status check or assessment of how many caregivers are within the organizations, and then publicizing and informing them about certain policies that are in place that they should be aware of that could affect them. Understanding the policies will really allow everyday working caregivers and the employees to know that their voice matters and vote for what's going to affect you, not only in your bottom line, but what's going to affect your personal home life.
Often when we find ourselves in that care position, we immediately, as you did, start the internet research instead of starting right at work and seeing what they can provide us, what insights, what resources they can lead us to. So that's a good point.
And I encourage organizations, employers who are listening in, I encourage you to walk the talk. You're always supporting good causes. Perhaps if you could, Jen, just list the two major nonprofit organizations you work with. Why don't you list them and we'll put them in our show notes. Maybe employers out there, this is a good direction to go in and do some support and show your employees, show your consumers, you really are walking the talk.
So number one, caring across generations. They do wonderful work supporting and also advocating for care workers. And the second thing is, I live in California, so I advocate for local, regional caregiver resource centers. So for me, I work for a Family Caregiver Alliance. They provide a lot of resources for caregivers within the state. But I would say for the companies and employers that are listening in right now, work with their HR department and also find out what are the local caregiver resource centers that are available, because you may not have the information, but guess what? They do. So if you know their phone number, you know their contact person, anytime an employee says, hey, I'm in a caregiving situation, then you have your go-to. At least you have one point of contact and say, I know who you can talk to. And actually, I have one third thing. Can I add third?
Yes.
Third thing? I was reading through your book. I love how you identify the employee assistance programs. Update that listing or find out how to update that listing for available resources. I think, I don't know how often those are updated, but if you can get something new and fresh out there for your current employees, I think that would be good. Because I'm going to tell you, the last thing a caregiver wants is if you give them a list and they call it and nobody picks up, that's just a waste of their time.
Yeah.
I'm going to say, Zach, Selma, how many times have there's a big list of things to call.
That's
a lot of people to call. But if you call, that business no longer exists or it just doesn't go anywhere, you just wasted 10 minutes of your time when you could be doing something else. I threw in that third one just for fun.
No, thank you. Thank you so much. And I do want to reiterate one thing, though, because national companies have employees in California. And I and Selma have both been very appreciative of what Family Caregiver Alliance does online. It applies to anyone, not just California. The resources, their articles, absolutely incredible. I encourage everyone to check those out. We'll put those in our show notes. I tell you what, Selma, I think we're going to do the very first challenge to our listeners since we started our show. You ready, Selma?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
I am going to challenge one of our listeners out there today, or whoever picks this up, to go out and be the first to do a senior shower in your organization.
I love it.
And then to get back to us and tell us about it, and we will publicize the heck out of it. You will stand out if you do it. I promise you. All it's going to cost you is paper cups, a beverage, maybe a cake, and conversations with Jenn Chan. I'm challenging him, Selma. What do you think?
I love it. I love it.
All right.
Yes.
All right. Awesome. So, Jenn, on that note, how can people reach out to you so they can get a senior project done in their organization?
I love this challenge. I welcome all the conversations and to guide any folks who want to launch this with me. You can contact me through my website, seniorshowerproject.com. Also email jen@seniorshowerproject.com. I cannot wait to get this party started with all of you. And for all the future and current working caregivers out there, I know there's millions and millions out there, and I'm pretty sure if I had to bet my money on it, they'd appreciate this celebration of their identity and their role, and would appreciate the support from everyone around them.
We cannot thank you enough for your time and for being on here, Jenn, and for all your advocacy and work that you do for young, for LGBTQ members of our community, for everyone that you represent and work for. We can't thank you enough. We really can't. I mean, I don't know if our
Yes.
producer will allow this, and we have to pay royalty fees, but we should be playing Let's Get This Party Started right now to close out. Let's get.
Yeah,
Thank you.
let's do it.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Jen.
Thank you, Gwen. Thank you for your tireless advocacy for caring.
Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to catch new episodes of Working Caregivers, the Invisible Employees podcast, every other Tuesday. Please also visit our website, invisibleemployeeadvocates.com, to subscribe to our newsletter, purchase our book, and learn more about how we can help you strengthen your workplace to become more supportive of working caregivers.